There is perhaps no greater difficulty in today's modern culture than achieving and acquiring inner stillness. We live in a world where we are constantly inundated with distractions, constantly inundated with things that are grabbing for our attention. And this has reached such a extreme that many of us think that we are being still when we are in fact not doing that. So, for example, how many of you sit down to eat a meal and you have a podcast play in the background and you feel like you're relaxing and calming down and being still? That's not being still. You have a podcast going. How many of you go on a walk and have to have music playing? How many of you get into the car and immediately turn on the radio? We all do this, and we all wonder why we feel so out of control and out of touch with our inner selves. So many people are experiencing anxiety. So many people are experiencing just all sorts of mental struggles because they actually don't have time to process or to think or to spend time alone with themselves and with God. We are just so distracted. And so I wanted to make a practical video as somebody who is not immune to this struggle, but as somebody who has been for years now chipping away at trying to find ways to reduce the distraction-ridden world that I exist in to create space for true quiet. So these are a few practical ways that we can do this. The first is by taking between 20 and 30 minutes at the beginning of your day, preferably as soon as you wake up, to simply be still. During this time, you shouldn't have music playing. You shouldn't even allow your thoughts to go crazy. During this time, you would be engaging in something called centering prayer. And this is the idea largely developed by the Cistercian monks and Trappist monasteries, that kind of idea. And this is where you're essentially taking one word, a centering word, usually a word like mercy or Christ or love or something, and that word acts as essentially the word that pulls your mind back to being still before the presence of God. I have found this practice incredibly difficult, the most difficult practice in my spiritual life by far. And I've realized that the reason it's so difficult is because I don't know what it means to be still. We don't have a lot of opportunity to truly still ourselves, our minds, our souls, our bodies. And so I would encourage every human being to try to cultivate. And listen, 30 minutes might be ambitious. Start with 5. Start with 5 to 10 minutes where you sit, you pick a word, you close your eyes, and you try to just be still. And anytime you feel your mind getting distracted and getting lost in some thought, use your word to draw your mind back. This is one way, one exercise that can help us to find what stillness actually means. And in particular, stillness before God, because, unlike a more Buddhist or Hindu kind of tradition with this idea of emptying your mind, you're not simply emptying your mind so that it's this void. You're bringing your attention into focus to commune with God. And so you are emptying your mind of all your rampant thoughts, but intentionally so to bring yourself into communion with God. So this is not a void. This is an opportunity for communion in a particular way that allows for and encourages stillness. The second thing that I would say is we should start to be more intentional with our time. And what I mean by this is we should start to recognize that the moments of time that we are used to filling with some kind of noise or stimulus, trying to go without that. And cultivate a more simple approach to life. And this, I will admit, is going to take a great deal of determination and discipline. This isn't going to come easily. It's not going to come naturally. And in fact, it might for a time feel quite uncomfortable. But when you get into the car, instead of turning on music or turning on a podcast, try just driving in the quiet. Try driving without anything going on except the steady hum of the car engine. When you're sitting down for a meal, instead of turning on a YouTube video in the background or scrolling and reading the news for the day, whatever it is you do, sit, eat your food, drink your water. Don't do anything besides that. So many of our distractions are habits that have been formed through finding, or rather, by not finding the joy in simple tasks. We've tacked on these other things as necessary in order for us to find joy or some sense of satisfaction in simple tasks. But we should be able to drive a car in silence or to eat a meal in silence and to find joy and satisfaction there. And the reason that feels so unnatural is because we've started to think about these things as always necessitating some other outside source of stimulation. Being alone with our minds is a scary place, but it's also the place where we reach a clarity of mind and a clarity regarding ourselves that brings about a greater honesty between us and between God and our prayer life, between us and our spouse. And it also helps us to recognize that so much of the stuff that bothers us is self-inflicted because we just don't stop and be still. If we can learn anything from the fathers of the church, it's that throughout all of history, the fathers, when they're seeking deep communion with God, they go out, away from distraction, away from noise, into the desert, usually. And in the desert, they are still. They sit, they are still before the presence of God, and they eliminate that which distracts them. And this is the height of the Christian experience in many ways. When Christ desired communion with his Father, oftentimes it says that he would withdraw from the crowds and go alone to pray. We as Christians need to do a better job of actually giving ourselves opportunities to do this. And so these are really the two things that I would say are most important. And I might even just add on, get off of social media entirely. You don't need it. You don't need it. It's not adding anything to your life. You may think that it is. You may think that you're missing out by not being on there. But if you were to really evaluate your life and think about the edification that social media brings to your life, I can almost guarantee that 99% of you would have to admit that it does not truly edify, at least not without a real redefinition of words taking place. So be intentional with your time. Be intentional with your activities. Activities that you would typically fill with noise, do it in silence, focusing on the food that you're eating, focusing on the car that you're driving. Focusing on the people that are immediately surrounding you. And I would also highly recommend practicing centering prayer, especially at the very beginning of the day, taking just a little bit of time to bring your heart and your mind and your attentiveness to God and to his presence and to eliminate all other distractions as really a means of setting your day up to be intentional. And I think if we practice these things more regularly, we're going to find that some of the problems, like our anxiety or our depression, are going to be minimized in our life. I'm not saying that this completely eradicates some of these things, but it will definitely minimize some of these things. And the only reason that we don't experience the kind of peace that we would like, or many of the reasons we don't experience the peace we would like, is because we're just so distracted and so overstimulated, and we feel like we don't know how to escape. Yes, it takes discipline. Yes, it takes intentionality, but it is possible. And when we do it, we will reap the rewards of deeper communion with God, with others, and with our interior dispositions, attitudes, and all the stuff that goes on that sometimes just sits below the surface because we don't pause to actually take time to process it. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope that it helps you to start to pursue and achieve a greater inner stillness. This is an important part of being a Catholic Christian, and we should all be intentionally seeking after it.